Let me welcome everybody, all students. It's great to see you all there on your Saturday. So we're organizing today a masterclass, which we hope is directly relevant to what you're doing in the X Culture project. And the goal is, of course, not only to learn the knowledge, but also apply it in the project, as we speak. I want to say that we're also going to have another a masterclass next Saturday, same time, on international business strategy. We'll follow up early next week with the link and presentation details. Now, I want to welcome and thank our masterclass lecturers for this day, Dr. Karen Lynden and Dr. Bill Johnson. Karen is a lecturer of international business at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington in the United States. And she has been a contributor to the X Culture for a long time, actually since 2014. She serves as a faculty advisor to the X Culture coaching programs, and she's also very active in the X Culture Teaching and Learning Forum. In the context of the forum, we're actually organizing this masterclass. She's currently part of several global virtual team projects spanning multiple regions and time zones, and she has therefore great experience to share about how to navigate time zone difference and working in global virtual teams. Bill Johnson. Bill is professor of management at the Black School of Business, Penn State University, Erie. His research and teaching interests are at the intersections of innovation strategy and international management. He has written several books and has been associated with the X Culture program since its establishment back in 2010. So the floor is to Karen and Bill. We look forward. I want to say to our speakers, if you want to ask a question, maybe you can include it in the chat, and I will try to register the questions and to address towards the end of the class. Thank you very much to all. Enjoy. Karen and Bill.
Thank you so much. For my presentation, I plan to take about 15 minutes, and I hope that it will be interactive. So I've got a story to tell, and then I have a couple of tools that I'm hoping that you're all interested in giving a try. I'll have some QR codes so you can use your mobile to check them out, or we'll drop the links in the chat and you can go about it that way as well. So just to get us started, I think a really nice way that we start our X Culture community calls is to ask, what time is it where you are right now? So if you could use the chat and let us know what time is it. So for me, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. It's coffee time. And it's just always
maybe
so
let's also ask about the weather, because it's snowing here where I am, which is like the first time in 5 years. It's a big deal. So it's very cold, minus 10 Celsius. So the coldest I remember. So yeah.
Well, that's
I'm curious if everyone's freezing or just us.
Yeah, just let us know what your temperature is, if you're having any weather. I'm in the same situation. I'm in a different part of North Carolina in the United States than Dr. Taras, but I'm by the coast, and we are getting snow today, and everything is completely shut down. They've even called off school for Monday, but we might get maybe 3 to 5 inches of snow. It's kind of a big deal around
you
here.
will get snow in Wilmington. That's like the first time in a decade, probably.
I've seen it snow at the beach a few times, and it's kind of a magical thing,
Really?
but it's not common, no. So yeah, it's great to see people from different time zones here. And Antonis, can you just call out a few? I can't see the chat on my view.
Yes, so we have Nova Scotia, Canada, 10 a.m. I'm guessing they have much more snow than we do. Kosovo, kind of cold, but not that much. 7:30 p.m. in India, New Delhi, and all kinds of other cities. 10 p.m. in the Philippines, a little chilly right now. I'm guessing that's like plus 15 for them Celsius. So a little chilly. So Japan, 11 p.m., minus 3 Celsius, very cold.
You're a champion for being out here at 11 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah. 5 p.m. in Kuwait, not cold, 18 plus Celsius. So it's like 70 something, 70. So yes.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for
Pune,
just
India. Halifax, Canada, very cold, lots of snow. Yeah, I can imagine. So yes.
Yeah, when we talk about snow, it's all relative, right? It's all in perspective.
Europe, to North America, yeah.
Yeah, so, and I think it's interesting. And for those in India, welcome. I learned in my late 20s that India had the half-hour difference from my time zone, and it was because I had computer programmers on my team. It was something that I wasn't even aware of until my mid-20s. So I'm just so excited for all of you as your young professionals, your university students. Some of you are late high school and you're part of the academy track, but you're learning things that I learned after I got into the world of work. So today I thought to talk to you about time zones and collaborating with people. While we call it X culture, and there's a lot of really interesting things we could talk about, intercultural competencies and things like this, but I have a feeling that when you walk away from this 8-week project, you're going to understand that culture is important, but really project planning is very important, and considering how you can collaborate. And I think it's just perfect timing that you're all here today. And it's exciting to see so many of you because you're just starting your global virtual teams, right? You're early track. So you've just started chit-chatting with each other to say, hello, how are you? I can't wait to work with you. Should we set up a WhatsApp? But how are we going to communicate? And then you have these time lags. And then all of a sudden you start realizing, hey, I'm getting a lot of pings at 3 o'clock in the morning on my WhatsApp because people are saying hello. And the reality of collaborating across space and time really comes together. So today I want to aid you and I want to tell you a little bit of a story. So this one's kind of a blast from the past that maybe Voss will get a chuckle out of, but this was in 2018. It was a research meeting, and here we are at a coffee shop, and we're all researchers that some of us met for the very first time. Some of us have never met after this moment live. But many of us continue to collaborate after this meeting in small groups and different projects. Sometimes I get to see Professor Wendy at different events in different places in the world. Professor Justin Kramer, he put together an X-Culture Global Conference in Thailand a couple of years ago. So when I get to collaborate with these amazing X-Culture professors and researchers, many times we are doing it virtually. And every once in a while, if we get that incredible chance, we will see each other face to face. But let's see what we can do when we actually get to collaborate. So today I want to talk about how do you find these viable times and date options with each other. Doodle is a free tool. Everything I show you today is free. And I'm hoping it's just something that you can put kind of in your back pocket to make it easy to get the ball rolling with collaborating with each other. And then talking about, now that you do have meetings, how do you actually make them work? So that's my 10-minute goal here today. So in looking at that group of people, there was a professor from Kenya. There was a professor at the time teaching in the Netherlands. Two of us were in the United States in the same Eastern Standard Time zone, and then one professor in Thailand at that time. And so here's just a snapshot of a very old email of us collaborating, because I think that this is we have a shared reality, all of us together. And so you're having these kinds of conversations with your team members saying, okay, how can we find times that will work? And so for us, I looked at these different tools that we'll take a glimpse at in a moment. And I realized that for myself and for Dr. Taras, it was 8 o'clock in the morning. But for Fred in Nairobi, it was going to be 4 in the afternoon. For Wendy, it's 2 in the afternoon. For Justin, it's 8 o'clock at night. Like, how do you ask somebody to come to a meeting at 8 o'clock at night? And then even the other option is even later. And then I mentioned, as you can see in my note, is that I'm also in my doodle poll going to throw out the 10 o'clock time for Justin, just in case he's a night owl. Maybe it's something that he'd want to sign up for. I know personally I would not be, ready to go at 10 o'clock at night. So how did I get to finding even what those times are? Well, of course, if you just have one person that you're collaborating with, we can all just pull up Google. We can look at our world clock. Okay, that's easy. Like Justin at that time, he was 12 hours away. It's actually kind of easy. 7 is 7, 8 is 8, 10 is 10. But now you start putting one more person in the mix, right? And that's where you try to figure this out. So here's one tool. This is a look of what World Time Buddy looks like, but we're going to get to it in just a second or two. But I just wanted to share with you a snapshot of what it looks like. So this particular tool, you just put in the city and your area, and then you can see across the board, I've got some times that are blue, yellow. And so, there's some, if we want to get up at our Eastern Standard Time at 7 in the morning, that's a viable option, maybe even 6 if we're early birds. But, we do have only a few time slots that seem like it would be okay or equitable for us to get to. And that this is a different tool, same exact scenario, same people, same places, but you might like the look of this better. And there are other tools out there, but I just thought to show you 2 visualizations of what this looks like. So now you can see, okay, 6 o'clock, Bangkok at night, Not so bad. It's a yellow. It's like a cautionary time. When we look at this particular time and date tool, green is good, yellow is maybe, and red is probably people will not love that you've proposed this time to meet up. So you can tell maybe 3 bands of time that could be acceptable for people. Maybe it's that 7 o'clock time or 8 o'clock time. So I wanted to show you those things, but now I want you to play around with this stuff. So you can either go to the link. It's easy. You can just type in World Time Buddy on your computer and you can pull that up in a separate tab. Or if you want to use your phone, I gave you a direct QR code to get there. And so what I'd really like to do is see how many of you can just, I want to give you 1 minute to get into one of these tools and just play around, put in, now you've got some different places in the world that people have told you where they are on this call. You know, we could plug in where Professor Antonis is in Greece, Professor Bill, he's in Pennsylvania right now. We've got people here from Japan and India. And then Canada will have, you'll see, I was very specific in my note. I'm just going to talk through as you're looking at these tools, but I'm hoping that you're getting to them. And if you wouldn't mind, give us reactions like a thumbs up if you're having success getting to these tools on either your phone or your computer. Is it working out okay for everyone? Looking good. Okay. So I'm hoping that these are helpful. And in the chat, if you all don't mind, if you used other tools that are free, we would love to see more options. I learned of one last semester that I wasn't even aware of. And it was a student of mine that said there was a student in the UK and they were on their team and that was the tool they used. And it was fantastic. And we used it as a tool in our classroom to check out. So please share with us other resources that you've come across. I'm going to keep moving on just as to give you an example of what a doodle poll. Oh yeah, sure.
Can I add one more important thing? So many people do not realize one more important critical factor, that is different countries move to summertime, wintertime at different times. Were you planning to talk about that? Because that's...
No, please do. Yeah, this is such a great, we're lucky that it didn't happen week.
Yeah, most of us think that, you know, we all move at the same time, but in reality, some start moving at the end of February, many move at different weekends throughout March, and then some in the beginning of April. And so while you can use the tool today and see that, for example, I don't know, the Philippines are 12 hours ahead of the United States, but then turns out the Philippines don't have summer winter time. So whatever it is today, it will be 11 hours in a few weeks. So you also need to check for the date. And so some tools automatically adjust for that, like calendar invites. The tools that you saw, you could actually scroll forward for the date and see what will be the time difference on a given date. But sometimes people forget, they check what the time difference is today. And so in March especially, often you would schedule a meeting only to find out that they already moved to the summertime and you haven't, or the other way around, and that can mess up the scheduling.
Yeah, and that even happens with our groups, with our research groups and our collaboration. So we just have to say, you know, sometimes things can happen, but that's a great example. And so this is the opportunity for all of you to take a doodle poll. So if you've not used Doodle yet, I strongly recommend it. It's free. You'll get ads, you know, kind of on the margins, but they'll never spam you or email you. And all of us, I mean, in my research groups and my work collaborations, we use Doodle all the time. Even for the people that are in my office that are on the same floor, we'll use Doodle instead of sending a bunch of emails back and forth between 7 people trying to figure out a time that will work. I will get together with my department chair and say, are you available on these dates and times? And then she and I will collaborate and then we'll have a set of dates and times. So while I'm talking, I would like you all to please use your phone and use the QR code. And then in a moment, I will pull up the live doodle poll so we can see how many of you actually participated in the poll. And then we can see what it looks like and how, right, it could be really interesting about how many people could. So just theoretically, pick a couple of times that might work for you just for an example meeting. So you could go to the link using the live link down there, or you can use this QR code and just pick a few and then you put your name and my email. Yep, I see right now there's a couple of dings that are happening in my email because every time that somebody does answer this poll, I'm going to get a notification, which is great because if I've got a meeting with 4 people and I gave them 2 days to answer this poll, but they got it done in 4 hours, I could just close that thing down. And now we know when we're going to meet. I send out a meeting reminder, do a shared calendar, right? Get it on everyone's attention as many ways as possible. Instead of dragging it out 2 days and waiting until my deadline. I already know that everybody's responded in time. It's fine. So let's take a look at what this is. So I'm going to stop right there and come over here. So here's the testing the features. I'm going to show you what it looks like on my side. I'm warming back up here. Great. Thanks for playing along. So we could see right now, this is such a helpful tool. It even tells me out of all the people that's participated, 4 people can make it at this time. That's your best time. So it looks like February 8th from 9 a.m. to 10 is going to be our meeting, but I am so sad because Alyssa and Ethan are not going to make it, but we value them coming, and unfortunately it's just not all the people can make it, and that happens too. So I would say with your global virtual teams, even if everybody can't make it, there's got to be a certain point. It's like, okay, fine, like we will have this meeting, but we will record it. We will share notes. We'll do something abbreviated. And then next time, let's flip it. And then I might send the message to the people that participated in the poll, but weren't able to make it. Maybe let's try to find out what their best times are, and then I'll post those for meeting number 2. And that way we'll just rotate our meetings. So it's fair for everybody. So maybe not everybody makes it to every meeting, but at least it gives equity. So Karen's not always the person that can't make it, right? Or it's always 11 o'clock at night for Voss to make the call. Trying to mix it up a little bit. In a perfect world, if it worked for everyone, 8 o'clock on a Saturday, then I would say lock it in like that's the routine, like eating the same breakfast every day. You know, it's like we brush our teeth, we have this meeting, we know it's going to happen. There's not this mystery of moving it around at different days and times, but you just have to work with the scenarios that you're given. So hopefully this is just a nice glimpse of what it looks like on the inside of this tool. And it's super simple to set up. Everything is completely free. There's a bunch of pro features, but I've just never decided that I needed the pro features. So let me just share one more slide here. Okay, so this is my last one, just talking about being flexible and then being proactive. If you know that you've got a Monday deadline and you really want to have a Friday or weekend meeting with your team, what day of the week do you think you need to start planning to have that Zoom meeting? Put it in chat, or you could call it out since it's just a meeting format. Should you start on Thursday afternoon and send the doodle out on Thursday afternoon because you want that meeting to happen before Monday with your team in X Culture? How far ahead do you think you need to plan? Anybody want to be brave and tell me? Antonis, do you see any guesses out there?
I see Alisa saying, since people usually have weekends between Friday to Sunday, I suggest Saturday. Same from Ahmad. The question is, how early in advance do you need to plan for Saturday or for the weekend? Right?
Exactly.
So-
Yes. So if you want people to show up on a Saturday on a Zoom, when do you have to start prompting them for what time?
Yifan said at least 3 days. So Wednesday or Thursday, 1 to 2 weeks before.
I would love 2 weeks before. I'm a huge planner. I would say 3 days is probably going to be great for all of your purposes.
Yeah.
Sooner than that, think about all the time zones and someone's sleeping while they get the message. So while Antonis and I collaborate, a lot of times it's early in the morning. It's definitely before lunchtime because I know that if he needs something from me by the end of the day, his end of the day, I've really got to get that done in my time zone by noon. Otherwise we kind of miss each other, right? And so you're all going to figure out these rhythms with your teams. But I would say Wednesday is the day that you say, please answer this in like today or when you wake up in the morning, because that way you can actually get on everyone's calendar. Because by the time everyone agrees that it's 9 o'clock on Saturday, but if you tell everybody on Friday night, they'll say, oh, but I already made plans, right? And then you just end up in this kind of time warp. So that's one tip. And then I just kind of leave you with these little points is that clocks show time zones. They're not real life obligations. So just because I'm looking at those time zones, it doesn't tell me anything about people's work schedules or what their preferences are. And this is probably a nice segue to Dr. Johnson, because I am a morning person. I wake up now, I'm like a 5:30 in the morning person. I did not do that in my 20s, I'll tell you that. But it's my new rhythm, and I like it. But I go to bed like a child, like at 9 o'clock at night. And so when we were setting up this 9 o'clock Zoom, even Dr. Johnson was like, this is kind of early in the morning. It's like, but for me, it doesn't feel that early. So I appreciate everyone coming, whether it was super late at night, early in the day, or in the middle of your afternoon when you chose to be here, but you've got other obligations too. So I'll kind of leave it at that. I appreciate all the time that you gave for me to talk through these things. I hope it was helpful.
Okay, thank you, Karen. I guess this is my time to take over here. And I think that was a perfect segue, because I was going to say I am in Erie, Pennsylvania. I'm at Penn State Barron, which is in the U.S., Erie, Pennsylvania. So we're 9 o'clock in the morning, and Karen's right. I suggested to her that was a little too early for me. I'm more of the person that stays up maybe till, well, maybe not midnight and that sort of thing anymore, but a little bit later than 9 o'clock for sure. Anyway, let me see if I can get my slides here that I prepared to show everyone. Okay, can you see them?
Yay, I see them. This is us.
Perfect. So yeah, I wanted to start out. First of all, thank you, Antonis and Karen and Vas, for inviting me. I just want to point out, I do go by Bill to my friends and colleagues, but if you want to search for me on the internet, you have to use William H.A. Johnson, as you can see in the slide here. The reason for that, I won't go into details, but Bill Johnson is a pretty common name in the Western Hemisphere. So at least from my generation, everybody knows Bill Clinton for good or bad reasons, maybe, but you know that William and Bill, essentially Bill's a nickname for William. Now, I'm using the term sailing towards team success for this little short talk, and you'll see at the last slide, or the second to last slide, why I'm using that. And I also thought that fit well with the recent X-Culture Symposium that we had in Vasa, Finland, which you can see in the picture here. So I think my mouse is down here. This is me actually in the photo here. And this is basically, again, if you don't know about the symposium, you might want to check it out after you've finished the program. These are usually students who have finished the program and join us at the symposium to continue with more fun and learning experiences and things like that. So what I want to talk about today, or have been asked to talk about, is using team charters for a strong team. And essentially, the big question, I guess, would be, why would you do team charters, or sometimes called team contracts, as we'll see? And if we are going to do them, which we do ask you to do them for X-Culture, why would you? You know, what's the advantage of doing a team charter? So what are team charters? This is a definition from the literature. So this is part of the reason I've been asked to make the talk, is I've done some research with X-Culture data actually on team charters and their usefulness. And that's actually me, and Professor Terrace Vast is also on that paper on the right there. But basically, team charters are formal documents written by team members at the outset of a team's life cycle that specifies acceptable behaviors in the team. So why create those things? And you guys are all familiar with global virtual teams, or you will be at least in the next 8 weeks. Now, why create them? Well, you've probably all heard about the life cycle of a team, right? Forming, storming, norming, and performing. Adjourning is one that people don't often use in that metaphor, but all projects and teams usually end at some point. So that's why we always include that. Now, why is a team charter used for that, particularly in terms of these 5 stages? Well, team charters, as we'll see, help with the forming stage. Oh, must be on the timing there. So that you can move on to the storming stage, which is where you kind of like storm things out. It's not about really fighting with each other. It's really about trying to figure out common ground and basically fight out your ideas and things like that. So typical aspects of a charter are identifying expectations, establishing team procedures, specifying performance appraisal methods for team members within the team itself, right? Now, I've got some notes here. One of them is, while not all cultures are used to explicitly laying out expectations of team members, doing so help with communication and agreeing to such expectations. So one of the good things about a team charter is it has an explicit nature to it that allows the team to revisit what it came up with at the very beginning of the project. And so if a conflict arises in the team, whether the conflict would be based on the team behaviors themselves or some external issue, like maybe you learn something about the company that you're studying. That gives a sort of a map to work with for the team to figure out how to deal with that conflict. So remember, conflict is not always fighting with each other. Conflict can be just differences in opinion. And so to come to an agreement on those differences, team charters can be useful for that. Now, these are the elements of a team charter. Specifically, and there, I think there is a description in the X-Culture information that you get. I'm going to go over these a little bit in the slides coming up. Basically, you want to start out with what are the goals of the team, talk about communication, how the leadership is going to take place within the team. And again, I'll talk more about these roles, tasks for people in the team. Accountability is a very important one. Now, this is a little bit of theory that, again, we've done some work on, and this actually comes from the paper that I mentioned that I've done with Dr. Taras with X-Culture data. And we essentially looked at two things: control theory, which is all about controlling things by formalizing them, right? So rules and regulations in your company or at your school, these are considered formalization, and they're used essentially for control. Now, control just means making sure that everything's going smoothly, not necessarily, being a master and a slave kind of situation. What we discovered, however, is there's another thing going on with teams, and it's not just control theory. Now, control theory suggests that writing things down makes sense, and that's where the team charter thing becomes important or interesting or useful. But there's also a thing called psychological contracting. And this is what we discovered in that paper a few years ago now, from X-Culture data, that teams can actually influence each other through informal means. So again, people from cultures that are less, more of a low context culture know how this works. And what we discovered was essentially you can get to the same result. The difference is, well, actually, here's the other slide here that has that paper that I just mentioned. And basically what it says is we get to the same result in terms of the actual grade at the end of the course, right? So team charters aren't necessarily helpful for the grade that you're probably going to get. What they are helpful, though, is making for happier teams. Why does that happen? What's the case? Well, here's the evidence that we had from that actual study that you can see here. Motivation level, for instance, the yellow line is the teams that had team charters, and the blue line are those without. So you can see here that for motivation, things like team member enjoyment and clarity of project rules, the teams with the team charter always did better, and particularly with motivation. But the biggest thing was particularly at the beginning of the project. So you can see here how quickly teams that had the team charters were already motivated to work. The bottom one here, they already knew what they were supposed to do. So clarity was high in that second week. Okay, and that's important because what it means is, remember the storming, norming, those stages? Well, when you're forming, using a team charter is going to help you get to those goalposts basically faster and more efficiently. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. You can see here, though, in the end, we have what we call equifinality in the literature, which means we get similar results. So these are fairly, in fact, I think they were still statistically different on some of them, like this motivation one, but you can see they're pretty close compared to the beginning. But you use a team charter, that you get there quicker. Now, what we wanted to know is whether or not this worked better with higher quality charters, right? So this is actually a study that we did after the one that I just mentioned that's been published already. And these are the aspects of a team charter that we measured. So you can see here, when there was no information on tasks, we gave that a section of 0. When there was sufficient information on schedule, we gave that a 1. And we added all these up to an overall quality score, how well it was written and everything like that. And that was sort of measured by a few different evaluators to see how much quality the team charter was for any particular project. And what we did was we then looked to whether or not there was any difference between those teams. And you can see here that actually between all the teams with team charters and those without, there's really no significant difference, as I mentioned before. However, you can see here at the bottom, if we separate the really high quality team charters from the really low quality ones, you'll see that there's somewhat of it. It's not very high. It's just around 0.05, which is usually where most really strong significant values are, at 0.05. So there's something going on there. What it also suggests, though, is obviously good teams are probably more likely, and we'll come back to that in a minute, more likely to come up with good team charters versus teams that aren't, doing so well. One of the really interesting things that I think you should pay attention to, again, is a reason for doing these team charters, is this one here. We regressed against whether or not teams referred to the charters after they made them. And you can see here that the number one thing here that is useful is that the charter usefulness is important. Now, there's also a little bit of a negative relationship with team respectfulness. Talk about that in a second. But this is a really interesting find, because what it suggests is if you are going to go to the trouble of creating a team charter, do it well. Make sure that it is a high quality one, because if it is, you're more likely to refer to it, particularly when there are conflicts. So you can see there was some correlational significance with the reporting of conflicts to administration. One of the reasons is, again, team charters help make everybody understand what's going on in the team. And so if there is conflict, they can refer back to it, right? Now, just something I didn't refer to before is sometimes we call these team contracts as well. But again, since this is X culture, different cultures frown on the use of the term contract, because it connotes some kind of legal aspect to it. Now, these are agreements, so they are contracts to some extent. Remember psychological contracting from a couple slides ago? But they're not legally binding contracts, but they are, written down sort of agreements, right? And we'll come back more to that as well. So again, as I mentioned, try to create a high quality charter when you're doing this. One of the things, again, process conflict, which is kind of conflicts about how we're going to do things in a team, was most affected by charter referral. So if you have a good charter, it's going to help with your process conflict, which is going to make you a happier team and a happier individual. Referral was mostly related to how useful those charters were. So again, make sure you want to keep it useful. Teammates that respect each other were less likely to actually charter. And one of the things, again, going back to that psychological contracting, is it seems as if teams can use psychological contracting to get to the same results and learn to get along with one another. But again, it could be a lot more rocky and a lot less quick without using these. Again, confirms process performance metrics like motivation, communication, etc., are useful when you do a team charter. I mentioned this already. If we see that a team charter is low quality, it could be a sign that there could be an intervention necessary to make sure the team's doing well. Because again, low quality charters tend to be associated with essentially bad outcome in the end, i.e. grade. So let's look at what a good charter looks like. I mentioned those sort of 5 different elements of a charter. The first one is goals. So ideally, all team members should agree on the goals for the team. And focusing on the major goal everyone agrees to is what you want to do. That's what's recommended here. Now, note, not everybody's going to share the same absolute team or goals that you have for the project. So for instance, you may want to have fun and meet new friends on this project. But the team as a whole may decide that the top goal is to actually win the competition. Those things aren't contradictory. You can have fun, but again, as a team goal, you all come to the agreement that it's about winning the competition. So you want to reinforce the actions associated with that. Now, the other thing, of course, is communication. So this is just agreeing to how are we going to communicate. Very similar to what Karen mentioned in the last talk. When are we going to talk? What time zone, or what time are we going to talk given the different time zones that we're in and that kind of thing. Are we going to use, what technologies are we going to use? I got Dropbox here, where you could have Google Drive, whatever technology that comes out. Technology changes so quickly that it could be anything, but everybody has to agree on it. Otherwise, it's not really a team coordinated effort. Leadership. Now, some teams like a specific leader to take a turn for final decisions. Many others like egalitarian teams in which everybody shares responsibility and duties equally. Now, in the working world, the leader may be given to the team as one's boss. So you don't have a choice over that. But in X culture, of course, there's no boss. But the team may still wish to allow someone to take the lead role in coordinating the team, and others might be quite happy to be designated tasks to them by that leader. So the idea here is to make sure that it's clear at the beginning of the project, using your team charters, how you want to set up these leadership positions and roles for each of you within the team. Okay, and I'll talk in a minute about the actual roles and tasks that you might come out with, which I think these are on timers because they keep on changing without me. But let's move on to this one. Roles and tasks. Here, you want to determine up front with the team charter what's the best thing to do for the team. And this is most effective when you base it on expertise, not on section report. So you don't say, okay, you're going to write the introduction, I'm going to write the market report, etc. If you're a marketer, yeah, market report makes sense for you, right? So that doesn't mean, though, that the one person overseeing that area of the work is the only one that has to work on that. But because they're considered the expert in the team, it makes sense that they have a significant amount of input based on that expertise. So the best way to do it is to essentially allocate tasks and roles based on expertise. So that's helpful in a team charter at the initial discussion of your team. Figure out who does what. What major are you in? Am I a marketing major, a finance major, etc.? And then divvy things up that way. And again, that probably makes a lot of sense. Now, again, very important aspect of team charters is dealing with conflict. So the charter, again, should spell out exactly what will happen if a conflict arises in the team. Now, I mentioned before, there's 3 different types of conflicts in the literature. So it could be task related, where someone can't do an assigned task for some reason, and so somebody else has to. It could be personal, which is, 2 team members just don't get along. Now, keep in mind, personal is the most corrosive to team climate, and it should be avoided if possible. We all have sort of disagreements on a personal level sometimes for unexplained reasons. The good news with X culture, it's about 8 weeks long, so hopefully you can hold it in if you do find a case where you don't really like someone on a personal level, and then you'll never have to see them again, basically. But either way, the best way to deal with conflict is utilize some resolution process, which is defined in your original charter. So that's why it's important to write that down. So doing so ahead of time minimizes the potential that a team member may feel that they're being singled out or treated unfairly. So if you have it written down in the charter, it'll be useful. You can see some examples here. For instance, if a team member's away for a while, then they should inform the team, which sort of makes sense. But you have it written down in the team charter, it becomes essentially an agreement that that's what's going to happen. And you can see here again, if conflict arises, you try to work it out. You should have a mechanism for working it out. And if it doesn't work and somebody's a shirker, for instance, which can be a problem in some of these teams, you should have it written down there that that person can be excluded from the team. That's a harsh one. As a professor, I've had to do that for some teams in some courses of my MBA course at Penn State University. I've had to have some teams where they did, it's actually a pain because then we have to have resources to grade that person as a solo, which is very hard to do when you have 100 plus students in your team or in your course. But I have the students do team charters, and one of the things I did with this one team was say, well, what do you have in your team charter? And of course, they didn't have anything like that written in it. So it became a little harder to actually get to that final outcome. And of course, in most cases, it's in consultation with the instructor or professor as well, too. So, but it should be written in the charter, hopefully up front, and everybody knows where they stand. And that's essentially because of accountability, which is this slide here, right? So teams, to be successful, all members have to be responsible, and they have to be held accountable if they do not live up to the original agreement, right, that's in the team charter. So in X culture, we actually replicate peer evaluations, for instance, that you'll find in the working world. So some of you have worked before. You might have done what's called a 360 review of performance, where they basically get everybody you've ever worked with to give you kind of a peer review. And in this case, just as in X culture, it's really important to be honest, right? And the thing to remember, in X culture, the peer review does not reflect your final grade, so you can't really game the system that way. Rather, it's used to track teams that need help. So if we see peer reviews being low, we might suggest that a coach come in and help the team bring up their performance. So we want to make sure that if there's a team member with low evaluations, we'll contact them, make sure that everything's okay. So that leads to this notion of giving a friend a high evaluation when they're not really deserving of it is really counterproductive, right? Now, although I guess if your goal is to make friends and you don't care about the outcome of in terms of a grade, then that's your own personal goal. But it's probably not going to be very good for the team as a whole. So just remember that everything should relate to that final goal of the team. And so things like peer evaluations are meant to help track the movement towards the goals teams must achieve. And so you can have that in the charter itself to discuss how things might happen, given, as in this example here, a student isn't really pulling their full weight. And the final thing with the charters is to make sure that they're signed. So that really is an indication that everybody agrees with it. Again, it's not a legal document. In my notes here, I said I have, in some cultures, agreement is a way for teams or agreement to the ways a team will conduct themselves do not necessarily need to be written down, but this creates confusion in cultures that do not rely on implicit relationship-oriented agreements. So this, again, tends to be a sort of a low context type culture agreement, but it makes sure that everybody understands, as I mentioned before, what the agreement is, and we can refer back to it, which is very important. Now, one of the things I do have on here, though, is you can change the charter. In X Culture, it's a pretty short project, 8 weeks. But if you have a charter, for instance, that's in a multi-year project in your work life, then obviously the charter is going to change over time. You may bring in new members, may lose some old members, and that sort of thing. And that should lead to changes being necessary. Now, great teams and performance. Teamwork is used to enhance creativity, not lessen workload. This is a really important point. It comes from some of my experience in my courses that I've taught too as well. Now, some students think that, we're in teams to make sure that, we can separate the work into, again, the introduction, the marketing plan, the finance plan, et cetera, and then we do less work. No, that's not the reason why we use teams in education or in the real world. So assembly lines, for instance, in production were used to lessen workload. But the insight in Japanese management practices, some of you have probably studied total quality management, TQM here, that came out of the 1980s, so many, many years ago, but this became a big thing and still used today, is the notion of teams and total quality being created through the use of teams. And the reason for that is teamwork means having more heads on a problem. Having more heads on the problem means you have more ideas to solve that problem. And that includes, by the way, AI. So if you're thinking about like generative artificial intelligence, just think of AI as being one of these super knowledgeable, not necessarily intelligent, but super knowledgeable friend that you have that you can play ideas off, but they don't necessarily have the correct answer to the problem either. So we want to bring everything in there. So even if you're using AI, you want to make sure that it's part of the team process of learning. So ultimately what that means is we should be using teams for creativity and having the best solution to our problem, not to make sure that we're doing less work. Hopefully less work will happen, but guess what? Teams actually, to some extent, make us work harder. Why? Because not only do we have to go over that, the work that we need to do, we also need to share it with our team and go through that process of making sure that it's the best that it can be. And that takes time. So again, it doesn't necessarily lessen workload, but it does increase the performance of the team in general. So my last part here is avoid using the charter as a mere job allocation exercise. You want to go through it step by step with sort of those 5 or 6 elements that I mentioned before. So having said that, good luck and have fun with your X-Culture experience. So this is I used this years ago in X-Culture presentation that I made. So it kind of fell into that sailing towards team success that I mentioned in the very first slide that I had. I'll end with this quote here that's on this slide. Plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. And this is Dwight Eisenhower, who was the 34th president of the United States. And essentially what he was saying here, the reason I like to use it is saying, the plans that you come up with, right? To some extent, this charter itself is not the important thing. What's important is the effort that went into creating those plans and the learning, again, understanding what's going on in your environment, i.e. in your case with the team charters, the team itself and the things in the external environment that might affect the team. It's the process of that learning that is important. Okay, so a great way to end there. And then finally, I just wanted to make a plug on some books here. If you're interested in, again, like I said, you'd have to search for William H.A. Johnson, stands for Harold Alexander, so it's very English, I guess. I'm originally from Canada, so it's my international credentials, although I have traveled the world to 60 plus countries and things like that. But one of the reasons I want to mention this is this book, particularly the one on the upper left, was one that I wrote for my international management class to help them do their X-Culture projects. Oh, some of you might find it useful. It's actually a primer, so it's less than 200 pages. I think it might be, anyway, in around 200 pages at most. So it's not your big textbook. It was written specifically to help my students with that. And unfortunately, I don't teach international management anymore, I teach all strategy now, which is actually the book to the upper right there that I use for my management or my strategy course in the MBA. And so I haven't been able to use the book itself, but I thought some of you might find it interesting. So thank you. I'll take any questions if anybody has any.
Great. Bill and Karen, thank you very much. I think we had a question from Lisa. Maybe it was answered. So if I understand correctly, we're supposed to write the team members' performance into the charter.
Yeah, well, obviously, obviously you don't know the performance of specific team members before they actually, work with you. But you want to have some indication of what is the accountability for team members that don't live up to the expectations of the team, right? So does that make sense? Is that great?
To me,
I
it's
so.
also very important to keep it flexible. The challenge with team contract is that you think since you have it on paper, it must be followed precisely. And so if somebody doesn't follow the rules that you set, the expectations that you set, you get upset because while we had a discussion, we have it on paper. And sometimes that could be problematic because sometimes things don't go as expected. So you have to always allow for some flexibility, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's why I have the, that notion that the charter can change. But again, for a charter to change, everybody has to agree. So that's really the important point. It's basically a tool that allows everybody to understand what everyone is thinking because it's put down into words.
Yeah. Can I say one more thing on what Karen was talking about? Is that a good time?
Yes, go ahead,
And
Vas.
don't hate me for that, but I will share with you one of my secrets, so to speak. Karen finished her presentation with how much time you need before you schedule a meeting, like how much time in advance. And I don't like scheduling meetings so much. I don't like scheduled meetings. I every time somebody asks me to complete a doodle poll, I get very upset. I'm one of those people who is in front of the computer most of the time, so I very strongly prefer that you just call me, preferably on the phone, not on Skype, or if we need to share screens on WhatsApp. But often I noticed, one, it takes more time to schedule a meeting than the meeting itself. Two, very importantly, the meetings by default in Zoom are scheduled for 1 hour, and people feel like we have to stay for the whole hour. And sometimes it would have been enough just to talk for 7 minutes. On the phone, we just talk and we are done. In Zoom, we always spend so much time. And three, and that's my personal, I keep forgetting about those meetings. In the old days when we had Skype, people would just call you. And if you forget, it still rings and you're like, oh yeah, hi, Bill. So now we have a meeting and I forget and people wait for 10 minutes and then they don't feel comfortable informing me, or they send me an email and I don't change emails. And then I look like the irresponsible team member who forgot about the meeting. Had they called me, I was on the computer, I was available. So my personal preference is not to schedule, just if you have a question, call me. If I'm in a meeting, I'll call you back a little bit shorter. I mean, in a short while. I know it's not working for everyone. I admire that Karen literally plans some things a year in advance, like especially summer travel. So, but do allow for the possibility of team members like myself on your team who are sort of prefer the flexible approach as opposed to long-term planning. So both are fine. And I suppose, some people prefer one way or the other, but it's possible that reasonable people may prefer more flexibility, not because they're lazy or irresponsible, but just simply because they don't want to process losses, so to speak.
I totally hear you, Boston. I just want to say, yeah, not to rebut, but I totally agree. So 7-minute meetings, we used to do this at work too, like 15-minute stand-up meetings, things like this, letting people know like you don't have to carve out an entire hour. And I'll tell my students too, like office hours, it's not an office hour. You're just going to come in, we're going to screen share, we're going to fix something, and then you're gone. So also being clear about that, maybe not being so structured and feeling like it's an entire hour. But I will say that Boss Taras is a unique individual and he will pick up the phone. If you call him, he will pick up. But how would we ever have a meeting for Trieste with 7 people in different time zones if we never had a doodle poll or so I think that yes, personal preferences should definitely be thought about, and then also giving each other like grace and understanding. Like somebody doesn't show up to a meeting, who here has not been late for a train, or things happen. And so also just being kind with each other and not kind of getting hard about oh, this person didn't show up and now like they've got a demerit in your mind. Is like, okay, what can we do? We've got 8 weeks to make something really great happen here.
Right.
Yeah. One more thing. So sometimes the reason no scheduled meeting is preferred because it can be faster too. If I'm working on something and I need from Karen 1 second of her time, if I try to either schedule a meeting or send an email, by the time I hear back, I may have lost my sort of train of thought, right? So, and sometimes it's just easier call, 30 seconds done, and you can continue working both ways. But obviously, sometimes that's not optimal. You need to schedule a meeting, especially if it's a larger team meeting. Totally agree with Karen on this one.
Yeah, I've just noticed in the chat group, Sequoia Miranda, I think, has a question there. If you could, I can't answer it myself. So
The question is for our group, where do we find what we're supposed to be doing as a group for our assignment? I think that's for Voss.
Sorry. I was responding to someone in the comments.
Yeah.
Missed. Yeah.
So the question is for our group, where do we find what we're supposed to be doing as a group for our assignment?
Excellent question. That's why we would not place you on the team if you don't know the answer to that question. You need to start with the readiness test. It explains everything. And if you have not done the readiness test, we will not place you on the team. But the preparation for the readiness test will walk you through all of those questions. And so you need to read the training module. You need to go to the resource page. So if you haven't done any of that, go to the email with the subject line, Welcome to Xculture from admin@xculture.org. Click on the resource page, read everything, you will know the answers, and then do the test. Then we will know that you know the answers, and then we will place you on teams. So this is a question that you need to figure out sort of the answer, not on your own. We give you the resources. So, yes.
So that's great. I think we have 3 minutes to conclude. If I can summarize a bit, I think what Karen basically said, well, she gave tools, obviously, which are going to help the teams, plan meetings. But one important message of Karen is, be flexible and also be aware of the different time zones. For someone in the West Coast in the United States, working with someone in India, that is approximately 13 hours difference. So, try to respond fast so that the other person sees the email before going to bed. That's going to accelerate collaboration, and also be flexible and be understanding. And Bill, I think the most important message is, when you work in teams, when you work also in global virtual teams, okay, you have to work on the task, obviously, but you also have to devote time to develop as a team, to become a team. And team charters are very, very useful because they also identify the areas where you need to pay attention too. So I really hope that was useful. I want to thank all 67 participants that attended this session. I want to wish all the students good luck with their project. And again, over a week, we have another masterclass on global strategy. We're going to watch Stefano Elia deliver a lecture for approximately 1.5 to 2 hours to a group of MBA students on global strategy, and we're going to send the information on that early next week. So thank you all. Thank you, Vas. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Bill, for your time and the presentation. That was great. Thank you.
And most importantly, thank you, Antonius, for starting this wonderful initiative. So very important. Hopefully people are learning new things. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye. Thank you, Karen and Bill, for your time and expertise.